John Whitaker was a man who had always walked his own path. From the moment he could remember, he had lived by a set of principles that guided every step he took. His life was simple, but full of purpose. He worked hard on his small ranch on the edge of the settlement, tending to his animals, repairing fences, and cultivating the land that had been in his family for generations. Unlike many men in the town, John did not rush through life looking for distractions or fleeting pleasures. He appreciated quiet mornings when the sun rose over the hills, the soft hum of birds in the trees, and the smell of fresh soil after rain. These moments gave him peace and clarity. He felt that life's true value could not be measured in wealth or appearances. Despite his quiet nature, John had always been noticed. Women in town often admired him for his strong shoulders, kind eyes, and steady hands. They whispered about him in the marketplace and left notes on his door, hoping to catch his attention. Yet every time someone expressed interest in him, John smiled politely and declined. It wasn't that he did not appreciate their kindness or beauty, he did. He valued honesty, warmth, and character far more than outward charm. John believed that companionship was something deeper than shared meals or conversations. It was about understanding, trust, and a connection that went beyond appearances. Many people in town did not understand him. Some called him stubborn, while others joked that he would remain a bachelor forever. His friends tried to persuade him, telling him that life would be lonelier without a partner. But John always shook his head gently. He explained that he did not want to marry simply because it was expected, nor did he want to settle for someone whose heart and mind did not match his own. John was patient, and he believed that the right person would come into his life when the time was right. Life on the ranch kept him busy. From early morning until late evening, John moved tirelessly through his chores. He fed the animals, milked the cows, repaired broken fences, and tended to the small orchard behind his house. The work was hard, but he found satisfaction in it. It was not just a means to survive. It was a way to stay connected to the land, to feel grounded and useful. His neighbors often admired his dedication, and many young men would visit the ranch, hoping to learn from him. John, ever patient, would teach them everything he knew about farming, livestock, and living in harmony with the land. He took pride in guiding others, but his own heart remained untouched, waiting for someone who could see him as more than a helpful neighbor. Evenings were John's favorite time of the day. After finishing his chores, he would sit on the porch of his modest home, sipping a cup of warm tea as the sun dipped below the horizon. The sky would turn shades of orange, pink, and purple, reflecting on the small pond near his ranch. He often thought about the life he wanted, not just a life of work, but a life shared with someone who truly understood him. He would imagine conversations with a partner who laughed at his quiet jokes, who listened to his stories, and who shared his love for simple pleasures. But each time, reality reminded him that such a person had yet to arrive. John's past experiences with women were few, but they had taught him lessons he carried deeply in his heart. He had been courted gently by a few women, and while some were kind, none had stirred the connection he sought. Some were drawn to his property, others to his reputation, and a few to the idea of having a strong, reliable man by their side. John could sense these intentions, and he realized that a relationship built on anything other than genuine understanding would not last. He valued honesty above all else, and he believed that rushing into a relationship for comfort or convenience would betray both himself and the other. His reputation as a man who refused to marry became well known in town. Children would point at him as he walked by, whispering to each other about the man who would not settle. Adults would shake their heads, wondering why a man with so much to offer would remain alone. John never minded the gossip. He had learned long ago that living for the approval of others led to disappointment. Instead, he focused on living authentically, making decisions that aligned with his values, and treating everyone he met with respect. Despite his solitude, John was not lonely in the usual sense. He had a few close friends who shared his love for the land and his appreciation for simple joys. They would often gather around a fire in the evenings, exchanging stories, playing music, and enjoying each other's company. These moments filled his heart in ways that fleeting romantic encounters could not. John cherished these friendships because they were genuine and unconditional. He knew that when the right person came along, she would not replace these bonds, but rather complement them, adding a new layer of connection to his life. John's perspective on love was shaped not only by his experiences, but also by his observations of the world around him. He had seen marriages crumble because of selfishness, impatience, or superficial attraction. He had watched women and men compromise their happiness for appearances or convenience. These observations reinforced his belief that love was more than a feeling. It was a choice, commitment, and a shared understanding. John was willing to wait for that kind of love, even if it meant remaining single for years. One day, as he tended to his orchard, John noticed a young woman watching him from the edge of the property. She waved politely, and he nodded in return. She was one of the many who had admired him from afar, and he could see the hopeful curiosity in her eyes. Yet, he did not invite her closer. He smiled gently, knowing that she, too, would eventually understand that his heart was not easily swayed. He wanted to give his love fully, not partially. For John, settling for anything less than true understanding would be a betrayal to both himself and the woman who might one day capture his heart. John's life, though quiet and disciplined, was full of richness that many overlooked. He found joy in the small victories of farm life, the satisfaction of a job well done, and the peace of knowing he lived in accordance with his principles. He knew that the right person would see these qualities, not just the surface, and that, when she did, she would appreciate him for who he truly was. Until then, John continued his days with patience, hope, and the quiet confidence that life had a way of bringing people together at the right moment, as the sun set each evening. Casting long shadows across his land, John would pause to reflect on his life. He thought about the women who had sought him, the friends who had advised him, and the world around him. And in those moments, he felt a deep sense of calm. He knew that love was not something to chase or demand. It was something to recognize, nurture, and honor when it arrived. For now, John remained steadfast in his choice, bracing his solitude as a period of preparation, waiting for the moment when someone extraordinary would enter his life, someone who would understand him in ways no one else ever could. John Whitaker was a man who had turned down every woman who came his way, not out of pride, not out of arrogance, but out of a quiet wisdom that few understood. He believed that life was too short to settle for anything less than a genuine connection, and he carried this belief in every action, every decision, and every thought. In his heart, he knew that the right person was out there, and when she appeared, their meeting would not be ordinary. It would be the moment where two lives, guided by patience, respect, and understanding, would finally intersect in a way that felt both natural and extraordinary. And so, John continued his days, tending to his land, cherishing his solitude, and holding on to the hope that one day, love would come, not rushed, not forced, but steady, true, and unwavering. The morning air was crisp and filled with the scent of pine and wildflowers when Ayanna arrived at the edge of the settlement. She was a young Apache widow, carrying the quiet strength of someone who had faced loss but refused to let it define her. Her journey had been long, walking through hills and valleys with only a small bundle of belongings on her back. She had come to this town seeking a new beginning, place where she could find safety and purpose after the hardships she had endured. Her eyes, dark and thoughtful, scanned the surroundings as she walked, noticing the gentle rise of the hills, the soft flow of the nearby river, and the modest homes of the townsfolk. Ai had heard stories of John Whitaker before she arrived. Some of the townspeople had mentioned the man who turned down every woman, a man who lived alone on his ranch at the edge of the settlement. She did not come out of curiosity or with the intent to impress him. Her thoughts were simple. She needed shelter, a temporary place to rest, and perhaps someone trustworthy to offer advice as she settled into this new chapter of her life. But when she first laid eyes on John working in his orchard, her heart stirred with something she could not yet name. There was a calmness about him, a quiet confidence, and an honesty in the way he moved and observed the world. She felt, somehow, that he understood life in a way that few others did. The townsfolk were polite but distant as she passed through the market that morning. Some greeted her with smiles, others with cautious glances, unsure how to approach the newcomer. Ayana had learned early in life that appearances could be deceiving, that kindness was often tested before it was earned, and that trust had to be built slowly. She carried herself with dignity, neither rushing nor demanding attention. But she noticed the subtle shifts in the way people watched her. She was used to being noticed, but not always understood. When she finally reached John's ranch, she paused. At the gate, studying the neat rows of his orchard and the small wooden house that sat nestled among the trees, she took a deep breath and stepped forward. John, noticing the figure approaching from the distance, straightened and wiped his hands on his apron. He did not rush to greet her. His instincts told him to observe first, to understand who this person was before offering hospitality. "Good morning," Ayana said in a clear, steady voice. "I hope I am not disturbing you. I am new here, and I am looking for a place to stay for a short while." John regarded her carefully. There was an honesty in her eyes, a directness in her speech that immediately caught his attention. Few people spoke to him with such clarity. Most came with hidden motives, subtle flattery, or expectations he had long learned to recognize and gently decline. But this young woman was different. She was not seeking admiration. She was seeking help. "You want a wife? Or just shelter?" Ayana asked bluntly, almost smiling as she finished the sentence. Her tone was not rude, but straightforward. The kind of clarity that startled John. He had been approached by many women in his life. Some polite, some persistent, but rarely had anyone spoken to him so openly, questioning him as if she already understood the careful boundaries he kept. John blinked, taken aback. He was not used to such honesty, especially from someone he had never met. For a long moment, he simply stared at her, his mind processing her words. Then slowly he nodded. "Shelter," he said, his voice calm but firm. "For now, shelter." Ayana's eyes brightened slightly, and she offered a respectful nod. She did not demand more, and that impressed John. She carried herself with dignity and independence, yet she had not hesitated to ask for help. He sensed that she was not the kind of person who would take advantage of kindness or hospitality. Over the next few days, Ayana settled into the small guest room John had prepared. It was a modest space with a simple bed, a wooden table, and a window that looked out over the orchard. She spent her mornings helping with chores, learning the rhythm of the ranch, and observing John's routines. At first, their conversations were brief and practical. She asked about the animals, the crops, and the tasks that needed attention. John answered patiently, noticing the careful way she moved, the attentiveness in her questions, and the quiet respect she showed for his work. As the days passed, their conversations deepened. Ayana spoke of her homeland, of the traditions and values she had grown up with, and of the challenges she had faced after losing her husband. John listened with genuine interest, asking questions. That showed he cared not just about her story, but about her perspective, her feelings, and the lessons she had learned. For the first time in years, John felt a connection forming, not a fleeting attraction, but a bond rooted in understanding and respect. Ayana, too, noticed a change in herself. She had arrived at the ranch expecting only shelter, yet she found herself drawn to John's calm presence, his thoughtful manner, and the way he treated the land and those around him. She could sense that he was a man who lived by principle, who valued honesty and integrity, and who sought depth in every relationship. There was no pretense in him, no desire to impress or dominate. He was simply himself, and that authenticity touched something in her heart. Their bond grew slowly, shaped by small gestures and shared experiences. Ayana helped tend the orchard, feeding the animals, mending fences, and learning the practical skills needed to thrive on a ranch. John, in turn, appreciated her efforts, recognizing her intelligence, her strength, and her willingness to learn. Even their silences were meaningful, comfortable, and filled with unspoken understanding. They did not need constant conversation to feel connected. Sometimes, simply working side by side in the morning sun was enough. One afternoon, while repairing a broken fence near the pasture, Ayana paused to watch John work. She noticed the way he handled each task with care, the patience he showed when an animal resisted, and the quiet determination in every movement. She realized that this man, who had turned down so many women in the past, was not cold or unfeeling. He was careful because he valued what he had to offer, and he would only give it fully to someone who truly understood him. Ayanna felt a sense of admiration growing in her heart, tempered by respect and a desire to earn his trust rather than assume it. John, for his part, found himself observing Ayanna in the same way. He noticed the kindness in her actions, the thoughtfulness in her speech, and the resilience in her demeanor. She was not perfect, nor did she claim to be, but there was a strength and clarity in her that he had rarely encountered. He found himself looking forward to her company, appreciating the way she asked questions, offered insights, and challenged him in gentle, thoughtful ways. For the first time in many years, he felt that the possibility of partnership, something real and meaningful, was not just a distant idea but a tangible presence in his daily life. Evenings became a time of shared reflection. After finishing their work, they would sit on the porch, sipping warm tea and watching the sun dip behind the hills. They spoke of the future, of hopes, of memories, and of the lessons life had taught them. Each story revealed more about their values, their strengths, and their vulnerabilities. In these quiet hours, a mutual respect and trust blossomed, creating a foundation that neither of them had expected when their paths first crossed. Yet, despite the growing bond, both remained cautious. Ayanna knew she could not rush John, who had spent years carefully protecting his heart. John knew he could not let past disappointments or societal expectations dictate his feelings. Both understood that true connection required patience, observation, and a willingness to embrace the unknown. They were learning not only about each other, but about themselves, what they valued, what they needed, what they could give in return. The townsfolk began to notice the change in their relationship, though no words were spoken about it publicly. Some speculated quietly, seeing Ayanna at the ranch more often, noting John's softened demeanor and the ease with which he interacted with her. But John and Ayanna paid little attention to gossip. They were focused on the work, the shared responsibilities, and the growing understanding that neither time nor expectation could force. Their bond was organic, unfolding naturally, guided by honesty, mutual respect, and a recognition of the unique qualities each brought into the other's life. Ayanna's arrival had brought a new rhythm to the ranch. The mornings, once quiet and solitary, were now filled with shared laughter and conversation. The chores, once mundane, became moments of connection and learning. And the evenings, once reflective and solitary, were now filled with thoughtful discussion, shared dreams, and the quiet comfort of companionship. Slowly, John realized that his carefully guarded heart was opening, not fully, perhaps, but enough to recognize that love, when built on understanding and respect, was not something to fear or avoid. As the weeks passed, the bond between John and Ayanna grew stronger, yet remained unspoken in its depth. They were learning to trust, to observe, and to respect the boundaries each had set for themselves. And in that quiet, patient space, something extraordinary was beginning, a connection that promised not only companionship, but partnership. It's not only affection, but understanding, and not only shelter, but a shared life built on trust, respect, and genuine care. As the weeks turned into months, John Whitaker and Ayanna's relationship began to grow in a way neither of them had expected. At first, it had been simple. Shelter for a widow, small conversations over chores, shared tasks around the ranch. But over time, a quiet bond began to form, built on trust, respect, and the small but meaningful moments that stitched their days together. John began noticing details about Ayanna that he had not paid attention to in the past. The way her hands moved carefully when she fed the animals, as though every motion had purpose and thought. The gentle way she spoke to the children in town who sometimes wandered near the orchard. The patience she displayed when learning new tasks on the ranch, never frustrated, never hurried. These details, small as they were, began to draw him closer to her, not in a sudden rush of attraction, but in a steady realization that her presence made his life better. Ayanna, too, found herself observing John more closely. She noticed the subtle gestures he made to ensure the animals were comfortable, the quiet pride he took in his work, and the way he listened when she spoke, truly listened. as though her thoughts and opinions mattered more than anything else. She had been around men who only paid attention to appearances or convenience, but John was different. His care extended beyond chores, reached her spirit. She felt seen in a way she had not felt in a long time. And she valued the honesty he brought to every interaction. Their mornings became a rhythm of teamwork and conversation. Together, they would tend to the animals, repair fences, and prune the orchard trees. John taught Ayanna how to identify which fruit trees needed extra care and how to anticipate problems before they grew serious. Ayanna, in return, shared stories of her childhood, the lessons she had learned from her family, and the wisdom of her people. These exchanges were not just about work or stories. They were lessons in trust, patience, and understanding. Each day, they learned a little more about each other, and the quiet companionship between them deepened. One afternoon, while mending a section of the wooden fence near the river, Ayanna paused and looked out at the flowing water. She had been quiet for a while, thinking of the life she had left behind, the hardships she had faced, and the uncertainty of the future. John noticed her silence and set down his tools, wiping his hands with a cloth. "Are you all right?" he asked gently. Ayanna smiled faintly, but her eyes remained reflective. "I am thinking," she said. "Thinking of what has happened and what may come? I have been through much, and yet I feel at peace here. Somehow it feels different than anywhere else I have been." John nodded, understanding more than he could say. He had spent years alone, watching the world and contemplating life's meaning. Few people could truly grasp the weight of one's experiences, yet he sensed that Ayanna did. She had endured loss, hardship, and uncertainty, yet she carried herself with dignity and courage. He respected her for it, and in doing so, he began to recognize that the connection he felt was growing into something deeper. Evenings were the time when their connection became most apparent. After finishing the day's chores, they would sit on the porch, sipping warm tea, and watch the sky turn brilliant colors as the sun set behind the hills. Words flowed more freely then. Ayanna spoke of her dreams and hopes of the life she wished to build in this new land, and of the lessons her past had taught her. John listened intently, occasionally offering his own reflections, but mostly allowing her words to shape the conversation. He learned to appreciate her perspective, her insight, and the way she viewed the world not as a place to conquer, but as a place to understand and live in harmony with. Their conversations often turned to the future, not in a way that forced expectations, but in a way that invited thought and reflection. Ayanna asked John about his dreams, not just for the ranch, but for his life, his values, and the meaning he sought in his daily work. John realized that he had spent so long alone that he had not shared his true thoughts with anyone for years. Yet with Ayanna, he felt comfortable revealing not just the practical aspects of his life, but the deeper parts of his heart. He spoke of the satisfaction he found in tending to the land, the joy of living simply, and the hope that one day, someone would share in this life with understanding and appreciation. Ayanna's presence brought a new light to John's life. Where days had once been predictable and routine, they now held moments of laughter, gentle teasing, and shared discovery. They learned to anticipate each other's needs, often completing tasks side by side without needing words. Ayanna would hand John a tool just as he needed it, and John would guide her gently when she attempted a task unfamiliar to her. These small acts created a sense of partnership, a feeling that they were not just coexisting under the same roof, but working together toward a shared life. There were times of reflection as well. One evening, while the sun painted the horizon in shades of pink and orange, John spoke quietly. "I have lived many years alone," he said, "and I thought I understood the meaning of companionship. But you make me see things differently. I never thought a person could arrive in my life and make the ordinary seem extraordinary." Ayanna listened, her eyes softening. "I never expected to find a place like this," she said. "A place where someone would see me for who I am, not just what I carry or what I have lost. You have made me feel safe, respected, and understood." The exchange was quiet but profound. Neither spoke of love in words, yet both felt its presence growing between them. It was not a rushed passion, nor a fleeting infatuation, but a steady, enduring bond built on respect, understanding, and shared experience. They began to realize that the foundation of a lasting relationship was not just attraction or desire, but trust, patience, and a willingness to accept each other fully. John found himself thinking of Ayanna often, even during moments when he was alone on the ranch. Her laughter echoed in his mind, her insights and stories replayed in his thoughts, and her presence became a source of comfort and inspiration. He realized that he no longer viewed his solitude as complete. Instead, he saw it as a bridge to something greater, something meaningful that was slowly unfolding before him. Ayanna, too, noticed the change within herself. She had arrived seeking shelter and a place to rest. Yet she had found a sense of belonging not just in the physical space of the ranch, but in the emotional connection she shared with John. She felt a quiet joy in the moments of shared labor, in the laughter over small mishaps, and in the thoughtful conversations that lingered long after they ended. It was a happiness she had not anticipated, yet it felt natural, steady. And true, their partnership extended beyond simple companionship. John began to notice her influence in the small improvements. She suggested around the ranch the careful planting of new trees, the thoughtful arrangement of tools, the small touches that made daily life smoother and more pleasant. He respected her opinion and valued her input, and she, in turn, learned from his experience and knowledge. Together, they created a rhythm, a balance between effort and care, work and reflection, independence and interdependence. The townsfolk, though still observing quietly, began to see the subtle changes in John. He smiled more often, laughed more freely, and seemed lighter in spirit. Those who knew him well noticed that the walls he had built around his heart were slowly giving way abruptly, but gently and with purpose. Ayanna's presence had awakened something in him, a recognition that life shared with someone who truly understands and respects you is richer than life experienced alone. As seasons changed, their bond only deepened. Spring brought new growth to the orchard, summer filled the ranch with the buzz of insects and the hum of life, and autumn painted the hills in brilliant golds and reds. Each season was a shared experience, a testament to the rhythm of life and the beauty of partnership. They celebrated small victories together, healthy crops, repaired fences, and the thriving of animals under their care. And in the quiet evenings, they reflected on the lessons of the day, the growth of the land, and the subtle growth of their connection. Through it all, John began to understand that what he had been searching for in the years of solitude was not merely companionship, but someone who would walk beside him with respect, patience, and understanding. And in Ayanna, he found all of this and more. She was not perfect, nor was he, but together, they discovered the joy of sharing life honestly, openly, and without pretense. In those quiet, shared moments, they realized that love was not always announced with grand gestures or passionate declarations. Sometimes it arrived softly, in laughter, in shared labor, in thoughtful conversation, and in the steady presence of someone who truly sees you. And slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, John and Ayanna recognized that what had begun as shelter had grown into something far greater, a connection that promised companionship, understanding, and the possibility of a future built together. As the seasons changed, John Whitaker began to notice something he could no longer ignore. Ayanna's presence had become essential to the rhythm of his life. Where mornings had once been quiet and solitary, they now carried her laughter and conversation. Even when they worked side by side on the orchard or repaired fences in the sun, there was a lightness in John's heart he had not felt in years. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, he realized that his carefully guarded heart was no longer just open. It was reaching toward something he had long thought impossible: love. Ayanna, too, had noticed the subtle changes in John, the way his gaze lingered on her for a moment longer, the gentle gestures of care, the unspoken attentiveness that showed he valued her presence beyond words. She felt a quiet joy in these small daily moments, a sense of safety and warmth she had not known since the loss of her husband. Yet she remained careful, understanding the depth of John's past and the care with which he had always approached matters of the heart. She did not want to rush him, nor did she want to force a moment that needed to come naturally. One evening, As the sun dipped behind the hills and painted the sky in shades of orange and violet, John and Ayanna sat on the porch, sipping warm tea and watching the orchard glow in the fading light. Silence fell between them for a few moments, but it was comfortable, filled with the unspoken understanding that had been building over weeks and months. Finally, John spoke, his voice calm but thoughtful. "I never expected to find someone like you," he said. "I spent years thinking I understood what companionship was, but I see now that I was mistaken. You've changed everything, not with grand gestures or words, but simply by being yourself." Ayanna smiled softly. "I did not expect it either," she replied. "I came seeking shelter, a place to rest, and I found this. I feel safe, respected, and understood. It is more than I could have hoped for." John reached for her hand, a simple yet deliberate gesture that conveyed more than words could express. He had never been a man of many romantic declarations, but in this quiet moment, he realized that his feelings for Ayanna were deep, steady, and undeniable. He was not simply drawn to her kindness or her strength, he was drawn to her heart, her spirit, and the way she made his life feel complete without demanding anything from him in return. Over the following days, John found himself thinking constantly about Ayanna. Even when he was tending to the animals or repairing fences, his thoughts wandered to her smile, her laughter, and the quiet confidence with which she carried herself. He realized that he had never truly considered what it would mean to share his life with someone until now. And the more he thought about it, the more he understood that he did not want to face another day without her presence. Ayanna, for her part, was beginning to recognize her own feelings. She admired John's patience, his dedication, and his unwavering principles. She felt a sense of comfort and belonging she had not felt in years. Her heart, once guarded by the pain of loss, was slowly opening to the possibility of a future with him. She understood that what they shared was not fleeting attraction, but a profound connection built on respect, understanding, and shared experiences. One crisp morning, as they worked together in the orchard, John paused and looked at Ayanna with a seriousness that made her heart skip a beat. He had been thoughtful in his approach to their relationship, never rushing, always considering her feelings. Now he felt the need to speak honestly about what he had come to realize. "Ayanna," began, his voice steady, "I have spent years alone, searching for something I could not define. I thought I could wait patiently, but now I see that the waiting is over. I do not want to live another day without you by my side. Not just as a friend, not just as a companion, but as someone who shares this life with me fully." Ayanna's eyes widened slightly, and her breath caught. She had sensed this moment was approaching, yet hearing the words made it real in a way she had not anticipated. "John," she whispered, unsure if words could capture the depth of her own feelings. He continued, "I have turned down many people in the past, not because I was unkind, but because I knew my heart was not ready. With you, it is different. I do not need to search anymore. You understand me, you respect me, and you challenge me in ways I never thought possible. I want to share my life with you, if you will have me." Ayanna felt tears welling in her eyes, but they were not tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, joy, and the recognition of a bond that had grown stronger than either of them had anticipated. She took his hand in hers, feeling the steady warmth of his grip, and spoke with quiet certainty. "Yes, John," she said, "I will share this life with you. I have found a home here, not just in the ranch or the land, but in your heart. I want to walk this path with you, side by side, through every season and every challenge." From that moment on, their lives changed in ways both small and profound. Each day became an opportunity to grow together, to learn from one another, and to strengthen the bond that had been patiently built over months of shared labor and understanding. They celebrated the simple joys of life, the first blossoms of spring in the orchard, the laughter of children who visited the ranch, the quiet satisfaction of work well done, and the warmth of evenings spent in conversation and reflection. John and Ayanna also faced challenges together. There were storms that tested the strength of the orchard, illnesses among the animals that required careful attention, and moments of doubt when the past seemed to press upon them. Yet, In every difficulty, they discovered that their partnership made them stronger. They approached each challenge as a team, relying on each other's strengths, supporting one another through uncertainty, and finding solutions with patience and respect. The townsfolk, who had long whispered about John's solitary ways, began to see the transformation. They noticed the ease with which he laughed now, the warmth that surrounded his interactions, and the gentle care he showed toward Ayanna. Some expressed quiet admiration, recognizing that their relationship was built not on convenience or expectation, but on genuine understanding and mutual respect. John and Ayanna paid little attention to gossip, knowing that their connection was theirs alone, and that its value lay in the authenticity of their bond. Evenings at the ranch took on a new significance. They would sit on the porch together, sharing stories, reflecting on the day, and planning for the future. They spoke of dreams they wanted to pursue, of improvements to the ranch, and of the possibility of traveling to nearby towns to share knowledge and learn from others. Their conversations were rich with ideas, laughter, and the deep sense of partnership that had become the foundation of their relationship as months turned into a full year. John realized that he had found what he had spent so long searching for, not just a companion, but a partner who enriched his life in every way. Ayanna had brought balance, joy, and understanding into his world, and he cherished every moment of their shared life. He no longer measured his days by solitude, but by the happiness and fulfillment he experienced in their partnership. Ayanna, too, found that her life had transformed. The fears and uncertainties that had accompanied her as a widow began to fade, replaced by a sense of purpose, love, and belonging. She found joy not only in the ranch and its work, but in the shared experiences with John. Their connection was steady, enduring, and filled with the quiet confidence that comes from knowing that two people are walking the same path together, with respect, care, and understanding guiding every step. One late afternoon, as the golden light of the setting sun bathed the orchard in warmth, John and Ayanna stood together, surveying the land they had nurtured and cared for. The trees were healthy, the animals content, and the ranch thriving under their combined efforts. Yet, more important than the physical accomplishments, they saw the growth of their relationship, the bond that had been patiently built through trust, shared labor, and genuine understanding. John turned to Ayanna, taking her hands in his once more. "We have built something special," he said softly. "Not just a home or a ranch, but a life together. I've waited for years for someone who would understand me, and I found you. I cannot imagine this life without you now." Ayanna smiled, feeling the warmth of his words and the certainty in his gaze. "And I cannot imagine mine without you," she replied. "We have faced the past, embraced the present, and together we can look forward to the future. This life, built side by side, is more than I ever dreamed it could be." In that moment, they both understood the truth of their journey. John's years of solitude, patience, and careful observation had led him to Ayanna, and her courage, resilience, and honesty had drawn them together. They had found in each other not only companionship, but partnership, respect, and a shared vision for a life lived with purpose and love from that day forward. John and Ayanna continued their lives together, building a home filled with laughter, care, and understanding. They faced challenges, celebrated victories, and nurtured the land and the bond between them with equal dedication. Their story was not one of sudden passion or dramatic gestures, but of patient growth, mutual respect, and the quiet, steady unfolding of love. And in that love, they discovered the true meaning of partnership, two hearts walking together. Side by side, through every season and every moment of life,